you for joining us for our ESG webinar series. Today's topic will focus on how brands can incorporate sustainable packaging as a potential avenue of distinction. So now, without further ado, it is my pleasure to welcome today's first speaker, Sean Simpson, Senior Vice President of Ipsos Canada's Public Affairs and Corporate Reputation Practice. Sean, you have the floor.
Well, thank you very much, Ellen, and hello, Dion. Nice to see you. Thanks to everyone for joining today's webinar. I'm sitting in for Mike College, who you've probably seen in other ESG webinars. He had a conflict today, and I just wanted to steal a few minutes of Dion's time to point out that this webinar is a part of a series on ESG hosted by Ipsos. The series started with yours truly and Megan Miller from our corporate reputation team presenting on how organizations can use their ESG actions to their advantage and improve their corporate reputations. A few weeks ago, Ted Doring, who leads our Creative Excellence Group, did a great session on the role of sustainability in advertising, where he offered some best practices on how we can all do better to achieve our goals. After that, Robin Seed, the lead for all our online communities, did a great presentation on the insights we have uncovered through our newcomers community. If you were able to listen in, you heard how challenging life can be for Canada's immigrants, but also about the opportunities there are for marketers and service providers. So today is the fourth in the ESG series, and joining us is Dion Daly from our innovation service line. She will be discussing the role sustainable packaging can have in innovation. It's a great topic, and Dion talks about the initiatives that can be undertaken to help the planet by using less packaging or more sustainable packaging, which can also help a brand become more distinct and unique in the marketplace. Thank you, Dion, for leading today's session, and I'm looking forward to the presentation. Over to you.
Thank you, Sean. Really appreciate that. And thank you for joining me today. For those on the call, this is a topic that is near and dear to my heart, and I hope all in attendance enjoy what I have to share with you today. And you know, I also want you to be able to walk away with a clear understanding of what your brand's consumers are really resonant with when it comes to sustainable packaging as a potential avenue of distinction. I'm going to do my best today to keep us to 35 minutes since our time is really valuable. As Ellen mentioned, though, if questions come through by the end, I may address a couple of them. Otherwise, I will respond to them separately through email. As a brief introduction, again, my name is Dion Daly. I'm a Vice President of Innovation Research with about 15 years experience in CPG and a passion for sustainability and the environment that extends outside of my job. Throughout this discussion, there's a few things I want you to be able to walk away with. The first is, you know, a clear understanding of what sustainable packaging really means to consumers, which can help inform the role that brands play. Second, how brands can commit to being a part of the solution with concrete examples of this commitment. Next, where sustainability fits within the hierarchy of consumer needs for CPG. What is needed to influence consumer choice? How can you consider behavioral science principles and what claims will be most compelling? And finally, how sustainability can contribute to greater brand purpose. Elevating your purpose can have the indirect impact that is needed for getting into consumer consideration sets. And in the end, how Ipsos can help support this journey. Like many of the presenters as part of this series, including Sean, we've been posing the question of what it actually means to be sustainable. What we as industry leaders consider as part of this definition sometimes can differ from that of the consumer. For consumers, we know from global trends data that they generally want to act responsibly, and that means making small or large choices that align with their desire to do so. They think that they can make a difference with these behaviors, and they believe that the impact can be achieved as long as they're in agreement by a collective. This is a collective effort. For marketers and product specialists, that means reminding ourselves that brands are expected to be a part of the solution. The onus is not solely with the consumer, brands play a role. With the intention of acting responsibly in an effort for sustainability, consumers are increasingly considering the larger impact of product adoption. As a consumer, how might I consider the ways in which the products I buy are manufactured? How might I consider the packaging and material that they come in? And how might I put my support behind manufacturers that have an eye to larger topics of equity and social responsibility? The reality is there's a big misconception around packaging and its importance to climate change. While consumers assume actions like recycling or adopting products with less packaging have a great impact to greenhouse gas emissions, the true rank would suggest otherwise. In the world of innovation, we must consider that Canadians are also among the 50% who are consciously thinking about buying products from brands that act more responsibly, even if it means spending more. As packaged good product manufacturers, it becomes critical to understand how your brands and products are situated within the say-do gap of consumer behavior. The UN Sustainability Development Goals, or SDGs, identify responsible consumption and production as a key component to ESG efforts, and notably one that finds itself bucketed under all three pillars: environment, social, and governance. We've observed many of our clients across industries summarizing their ambitions using the SDG framework. And one of these, as a tangible example, comes from Unilever, who clearly demonstrates their commitment and responsibility to do more. In this example, Unilever identifies itself as a company making products that use less resources. This product allows consumers to be a part of the solution. Consumers are rewarded for their participation, and it becomes something consumers are willing to share and promote, ultimately driving loyalty and repeat. I do really like this example for its exemplification of achieving sustainability development goals through concrete change. ESG can be the foundation of great innovation, but it involves a larger holistic commitment. And this shows a great deal of leadership from the brand, acknowledges what consumers really need from them to commit to change themselves. We know that sustainability-focused innovation can generate positive consumer response. We scoured hundreds of tested concepts for consumer packaged goods where keywords like sustainable, recyclable, compostable, etc. were included as part of the name. It was an anchor of the innovation itself. The fact is, better performance was seen on the key factors of relevance and differentiation, lending to an overall 4% higher trial potential. To briefly explain these figures that you're seeing here on the right-hand side of the screen, Ipsos presents the metrics shown here according to quintiles as it compares to our relational database. An indication of a plus 1.0 would be equivalent to an entire quintile database flag. So versus average innovation, sustainability-focused innovations influence a partial lift in relevance and differentiation by 0.5 and 0.3 quintile flags respectively. I want to be clear on a few things here. These innovations were built around sustainability as an issue. It's directly part of the name or platform. And so what it's telling us is that sustainability-focused CPG innovation is incrementally more appealing to consumers versus the average concept, and can offer a subtle means of distinction. But this does not mean that this improvement is necessarily possible with only a couple of words added to the concept. The learning from this is that brands shouldn't see sustainability as a goal, but rather as a means to better address core and unmet consumer needs. So let's regroup. To this point, we've identified that sustainable packaging really means to what sustainable packaging really means to consumers, and that's informing the role that brands can play. What commitment can look like with examples from Unilever and others using the SDG framework, and where sustainability fits within the hierarchy of consumer needs. Ultimately, a means to better address core and unmet consumer needs, not a goal in itself. My job from here is to demonstrate what is needed to influence consumer choice by better understanding behavioral science principles and considering the total consumer, who they are, what claims they are connected to, and in what context, and also how sustainability can contribute to greater brand purpose, providing the indirect impact that is needed for entering consumer consideration sets. This is where Ipsos can offer our support. Our mission in innovation is to be a part of that process and to do that in an agile and smart way, providing clients confidence. We're faster. We are accelerating time to market by delivering agility and speed through digital services, automation, and virtual solutions. I'll highlight some of them within this presentation. We're smarter and getting closer to real, and that's by mimicking the way consumers make decisions in real life using BSI principles, AI and machine learning, and simulated shopping environments. And we're bolder, providing confidence to go further with validated metrics, expertise in not only CPG, but also durables, services, new business models, and connected experiences across 92 countries. So that means that we're answering key business questions on the development of new or existing products prior to launch. And when it comes to ESG, we're identifying the claims, formats, pack routes, and ingredients which consumers find most compelling either overall or in relation to an ESG benefit, building out the solution. When multiple features are in play, pack, claim, branding, we're helping to determine the optimum configuration to drive consumer demand for ESG-led initiatives. We're assessing the impact of ESG-led product change on consumer acceptance using relational databases and validated metrics, as mentioned, as well as assessing the performance and forecasting the impact of product and/or business model innovations supported by ESG. And then we're diagnosing the role played by ESG-led features in driving demand, identifying areas of change, targeting relevant consumers, and simulating the impact of these recommendations. We do this in a number of different ways, but today I wanted to highlight the critical elements in doing so as it relates to sustainable pack innovations. First, we'll delve into the behavioral story, the core of our innovation philosophy at Ipsos, and the only way you as brand leaders should consider adoption potential. Next, we'll talk about what it means to uncover the most effective claims, not just generally, but in context of your product and the category and even markets. Following this, I'll touch on Ipsos's proprietary segmentation algorithm within the sustainable space. More details will come in the next sessions within the series, but for the time being, you'll be introduced to these segments and learn how layering them into innovation research can help to identify the best way to target your communication to maximize resonance. And finally, I'll introduce a new way that Ipsos is measuring sustainability and its contribution to not just product adoption, but brand perception. So we'll start with the behavioral story. If you've ever worked with Ipsos on your innovation research, you'll have heard us speak about BSI principles that our approach in innovation is built upon. At its core, we consider two key facts of consumer behavior. The first being that consumers inherently evaluate innovations relative to their current products. Though it's one thing to understand what attracts consumers to any product that could end up in their physical or virtual baskets, the perceived loss in switching to a new product has a much larger impact than the perceived gain in doing so. The second heuristic or bias that we often touch on relates to status quo. Habit is strong. Any changes from status quo is often viewed as a loss due to our inherent and strong tendency to not want to change. And so while we may see consumers responding to a product such as this with positivity and maybe even fervor, we must ask them point blank, not just why would you consider buying this product, but also does it beat this in your mind? There's always a trade-off, and some claims are more worthy of that trade-off than others. This is where we get to the nuance of claims and contextualizing them. When PAC is a claim, your brands need to consider a few things. When consumers take a product from the shelf, their first interaction is with the pack, how it looks, how it feels. They're consciously and unconsciously evaluating whether or not the material even is matching the claims of the brand. Is there compatibility between the packaging material and the message on pack? If a cyclical pack is made of discarded and recycled materials, is that clear in the look, feel, and structure? One example of this could be a beer product claiming that ingredients from the beer making process, like barley, is reused as part of the pack, something Corona had actually explored in certain markets. But the packaging story goes beyond that point of consumer selection. It is obviously not that simple. When reviewing your sustainability strategy for pack and pack materials, you as manufacturers are also making some trade-off between what may be compatible for consumers and what you can do with your current assets or potential investments in production sites to be more sustainable yet remain profitable. New materials may not run as fast on a packaging line or may need different machinery than their current solutions. Some materials, like barley, may have a shortage due to high demands across all industry, which will have an impact on your price and obviously be affecting your margins. So R&D and supply chain strategies are at play. The third lever is communication. If there's a mismatch between what the packaging conveys and the experience brands want to deliver, you may, in some instances, choose to educate the consumer. Here's how the barley would be used and why it matters. We're reducing on water and waste and so on and so forth. It could also be about setting category norms, especially in cases that require consumers' behavior change, like in the loop system. Ipsos does a lot of research on research intended to inform our clients about what they may need to consider for their own products and brands. One such study identified 40 claims that are commonly made on CPG labels. Ipsos, about 8 of them we identified are specifically packaging focused. And using a powerful agile tool called Dual, we identified which of these claims were most motivating in 5 key markets. While the full picture is quite market driven, fully compostable is part of the most impactful claim in every market for both food and beverage and home and personal care categories. In addition to this, renewable energy is also in the top 5 in every market for household and personal care. And upcycling is a relatively new way to look at bringing back packaging in a loop of added value rather than waste. This is interesting that it made it to the top of the list in food category, especially when it would potentially mean that a non-food grade packaging could be reworked and subsequently used as food grade material. And this has been a key finding for our clients, that consumers in recent years are looking for packaging claims above and beyond recyclable and recycled. Fully compostable is where it's at. But innovation business questions go far beyond that. When we speak about contextualizing claims, we return back to the conversation of pack material itself. There are ways we've built upon research on research I just reviewed with pack material images: glass, carton, metal, plastic, like you've been seeing on the screen. Results of which showed that consistency seen by market and category on claims is altogether different when we put it into context. So sustainability strategies need to take this into account in assessing risks and trial potential. There's more than meets the eye. Now let's move on to what I'm referring to when I speak of targeted resonance. To set the stage, in early 2020, Ipsos invested in a large-scale study that looked at the impact on purchase rate of sustainability claims in the dish soap category, using a fictitious brand called Sustain that used a bottle made of plastic collected in the ocean. Consumers were asked to shop this category in a realistic virtual shopping scenario using our SimStore survey approach, as you can see here on the screen. Broken into cells, respondents were asked to pick up their usual dish soap and rated on a few diagnostic questions. Then they were either presented with a Sustain bottle with no claim written in the little pebble in the top right corner of the label, and then the other cell had the Sustain bottle with the claim in the petal, stating the bottle was made with recycled ocean plastic. We commonly ask a sustainability question in pack research. Using a 5-star rating system, respondents judge whether or not this statement is true of the packaging. We act in a way that minimizes our impact on the planet, ensuring a sustainable environment for future generations. Within this research, it was revealed that clearly showing a sustainable claim improves the perception of brand sustainability. This would confirm what most of us would have guessed as a likely outcome of the research. But in what other ways can these results be useful? I want to provide potentially your first glance at our new global sustainability segmentation, which has identified 5 different groups of people who can be simply placed along 2 axes: a passion and concern for the environment along one side, and their level of active engagement with these issues on the other. For innovation development, the implication is pretty clear. With this segmentation, we can more or less assess who is most and least open to sustainability-led innovation. The so-called activists will always be ready to not just stand for change, but act on it if they can. The pragmatists and the busy bystanders are open to new sustainability-led products, services, and policies, but only if they're easy to adopt and cost could be a barrier for them. For the conflicted contributors and disengaged denialists, some sustainability credentials can be positioned as secondary co-benefits to perhaps tip the balance in favor of a new innovation. They, like most people, probably will make a more sustainable choice if all other things are equal. So for the widest interest in impacts, these co-benefits, these additional elements that demonstrate whatever it is that you're trying to get across, are pretty important. So within the last year, we reran that Sustain research considering these target groups. With the sustainability segmentation, we can see, for instance, that Sustain with the ocean plastic claim was significantly more appreciated by activists and by skeptics with lower levels of concern. The segmentation shows a level of granularity that could be key to answer some business challenges and help you and your brand teams target specific segmentations for activation. As a brief note, we had expanded on this research with a specific client. In this, we included the added layer of premiumization. Passing on a price increase is possible, but limited to specific segments. For example, pragmatists, or older, more affluent consumers, typically indicate a willingness to buy at a higher price. Whereas activists, who have the most concern on the environment, show intention to purchase more sustainable products, but being less affluent, face affordability issues at higher prices. The final conversation for us to have is on purpose as distinction. Remember, I spoke about sustainability-focused innovation and their ability to generate a positive consumer response. This 4% higher trial potential would be considered a small incremental effect on uptake. Our interpretation is that sustainability does not dictate the consumer decision process in isolation, but carefully selected claims can result in a point of distinction in the appropriate category. If marketers prioritize their customers' core needs and appropriately leverage sustainability, it has the potential to become an avenue of distinction and a component of success. So what does that mean for innovation adoption? People and brands are increasingly considering the larger impact a product has beyond its typical product benefits. So Ipsos has developed a purpose index, which can add a new dimension to concept testing to demonstrate if consumers perceive an innovation to have a greater purpose and if that perception aligns with the brand's intended positioning. We've found that consumers talk a lot about the importance of sustainability, of fairness, positive societal impact, etc. But when actually making a decision on products and services, this is when the say-do gap comes into play. The importance of these factors gets the purpose-focused innovation into the consumer's consideration set. But when it comes time to make a decision, purpose often takes a back seat to more product-focused benefits. That doesn't mean you should ignore purpose. First, getting into the consideration set is big. It increases the overall chance of adoption. And more importantly, we find that the greater the perception of purpose, the more positive consumers feel about the brand as a whole. There's a direct and strong correlation between perceptions of purpose and brand closeness. So how do we collect it? Our approach is simple. We conduct a direct comparison of perception between our product or service and what the consumer is doing to meet the same need today. Does the innovation itself over-index, under-index, or is it at parity versus the current solution? It's also helpful to understand if consumers are viewing the purpose the same way that you are. To accomplish this, we include a categorization question: equity, health, environment, or truly none of the above. So let's consider one last example where Tide is introducing an improved formulation, and it's up against Earth Breeze detergent sheets, which puts sustainability at the core of the proposition while still promising a powerful clean. What we've found is that trial potential is likely to be the same when considering consumers' current solution. But what could help EarthBreeze be distinctive is its contribution to a larger purpose. And in this case, it's all about its focus on the environment when we break it down. So in wrapping up, despite overwhelming claimed concern for environmental issues, consumers recognize that they have a role to play. But it's for manufacturers, retailers, and government to take the lead and support their efforts. Brands that provide holistic end-to-end engagement are acknowledged for their contributions. And sustainability-focused innovations can create an avenue of distinction for brands. Consumers buy products to satisfy their needs. Core consumer needs are required to mitigate any perceived loss. Sustainability benefits should not dilute the main message. Benefits related to doing good are secondary points of concern. And as we observed, motivation to act and pay is varying by consumer group. Though purpose does not directly impact adoption, it drives positive perceptions of the brand, and therefore is likely to eventually convince people to try that product or another one from the same brand. I was able to make it in the 30 minutes as expected, so I will open it up to see if there are a couple of questions. Otherwise, as I mentioned, we can follow up through email. And I have seen that there are a couple of questions coming in. I'm going to start by talking about some that are a little bit more generalized. One question came in about the consumer segmentation and how it works, and how you might apply it to your innovation research. So it's a great question. Basically, we have 3 questions identified as part of a larger segmentation algorithm. Using a typing tool and making sure that it's discussed and included as part of our survey design at the outset, we're able to add that as a flag for all respondents and identify how each consumer is landing in each of the 5 buckets or segments that we've discovered here. And just to be clear, this is a global segmentation. It's available in a number of countries worldwide, including Canada, where the numbers that I shared in terms of their size are what you would expect within the Canadian market as well. Another one here on, do consumers expect to pay more for sustainable benefits? On the whole, no. They recognize that they're part of the solution, as I mentioned, but it's for manufacturers to figure this out. You know, we think about these loop systems or the refill schemes, which, you know, quite reasonably shows that there are money-saving options within production because we're reducing materials, lowering the weight for transportation. So it's not unreasonable that those cost savings should be passed on, meaning lower cost per use for people who are loyal to the brand because they're buying refills. So I think, you know, to summarize it simply, on the whole, no. They do expect that that's actually going to be taken up by the manufacturer. There was also another question on which product categories are doing the best when it comes to sustainability-led innovation. Actually, in the research that we did, where we identified those claims as part of the names and saw that incremental lift, when we parse it out by category, we find that personal and beauty care currently are doing better over the average concept, followed by food, then beverages, and then OTC. So we were able to parse it out by category in some regard, and hopefully sharing some of that here is helpful to those on the call. And then I think this will be the final one I answered for today. Is packaging still top of mind for consumers given the ongoing focus on climate change and the events experienced in Canada and beyond? What we saw earlier, that even with respect to climate change, packaging is a salient topic. It's something that is tangible to people, I think. And so the topics that people talk about in social conversations when we scour online are certainly varied. And the key conversations around sustainability typically relate to clean water access in Canada and efforts of combating climate change at large, with packaging coming in around kind of 4th or 5th within the discussion topics online.
Thank you so much, Dion, and what a really interesting presentation. Thank you everyone for joining us. That now concludes today's amazing webinar. Have a wonderful day, everyone.
Thank you.